I think there's another thing that intrigues me about when we come to the reclining figures. When I went onto the Met online, I was looking for recumbent figures or objects, and it was quite a struggle to find them, because I'm interested in that idea of the...
We're all very alive and alert at the Met. But anyway, go on.
I'm interested in that idea of something that's collapsed but still holds a great dignity and power and even monumentality in its collapsed form. And when we come to the reclining figure, this is almost like a reclining figure that's been made to stand up, and I find that fascinating as well. I think the sort of Christian obsession in its iconography with dead and half-dead flesh is there another religion in the world that has as its iconography strapped up half-dead figures to bits of wood? I mean, it is extraordinary, you know. But even this is using the...
How to reduce religion.
Anyway. Sorry, yes, I don't mean to be offensive.
No, don't
yes.
be offensive.
But it is, I mean, it's but it's such an extraordinarily moving moment to capture, and then to attach this great religious, whatever it is, authority to it, is extraordinary.
And of course, in a way that I suspect the sculptor didn't mean it to be resonant. This is made of something that's dead. I mean, this is a.
But it's more than that.
But it's more than that. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a problem. To me, it's superb, but I can't quite get beyond the virtuosity, which I admire enormously, but I think it makes it, for me, sort of creatively vulnerable, and I'm quite interested
What about the preciousness of the materials? Because, I mean, in a way, that's something you resist, isn't it, in your work? I mean...
I want to make a really stupid comment that you can come back. I just sort of wonder why you would be given a piece of ivory or bone. Where would he have got it from? Where would he have gone to get it? Some
dealers, always dealers.
Dealers, yes. But I just I would love to know the narrative, because is this an elephant or...
It's an elephant, and generally ivory at this point was recovered from dead elephants. There was the whole issues that were... well, plenty, but it wasn't plenty, which is why they were rare. But the kind of issues that pertain to ivory, which of course so controversial at the moment, rightly so, are different at that point. And yes, you're absolutely right in what you said at the beginning, that this was seen as a natural marvel, and of course its whiteness and so on and so forth meant it's precious, and the fact that it came from so far away and that people didn't really understand a huge amount about the origins of this piece made it sort of miraculous in its own right. So that kind of miraculousness that's then attached by obsessive craft becomes, you know, as you rightly said, they join.
And it I suppose is just a sort of lingering question that if you're given a block of ivory, you then repeat a kind of image, an iconography that has been in stone or bronze, and that the 20th century unlocked a kind of relationship with materials that is in a way counter to that.
I'm not quite sure about that, actually. I have to say, I think that with ivory, it has its own discipline. It makes its own demands, and it expects a certain kind of viewing. So it's not just a repetition of something that's been made in another medium. I think it is actually incredibly medium specific, and the fiddliness, which sometimes we resist now, the virtuosity, however you want to call it, is absolutely part of that. And because of the kind of Kunstkammer context for it, then that notion of terribly close inspection, which in this case becomes charged inspection because of the subject matter. I think many of them were exactly executive toys, and many of the early ones are rather sort of ghastly exercises in making rings that all intersect and you don't know how it happens, that kind of thing. But this isn't, to me. It takes some of that.
I'm just trying to sort of get my
bearings.
yes, head and heart around it, you know, and struggling a bit, and that's why I'm fascinated by it, because I find it provocative, you know, in terms of where the skill sits in relationship to it as a thing to be experienced, a thing of struggle and anguish and about to fade, you know, something that's a few scenes further on, and it would be very different, yeah. So these recumbent figures.
Well, what we're looking at just briefly here is the figure of Adonis. This was in a Venetian palace by Antonio Corradini, who was a local sculptor but had enormous success across Europe, finishing in Naples. He's particularly celebrated for his sculptures of women and seen through veils. So veiling is a very key aspect for him. This again is a recent acquisition. We know there was a companion sculpture of Venus in the same room, but that's now lost. And this is, we're not showing any more angles of this piece than this one, because the back, although the back is very fascinating, it wasn't ever designed to be seen. So this comes back to that question a bit. I mean, we'll talk about the reclining question in a minute. But it comes back a bit to that question of, is this really a sort of pictorial sculpture? It's very, very sketchy in the way it was made. It's rather fascinating from that point of view. You can just, I mean, for example, just look here at that line between the thumb and the forefinger. It's carved quickly and straight up, somewhat exaggeratedly. This is the moment when Tiepolo is painting in Venice. And I think to some degree, he's trying to find an ease in marble that Tiepolo found in paint, a kind of quickness and flourish. The veil here is the veil of sleep. I think we have to imagine him stirring as we move closer to it, and we can get that sense that he's just coming, maybe about to wake up because of this weird dog's head that pops up here. I realised after looking at this piece for some time that animals, you know, whereas we human beings sort of drag ourselves out of bed and grow and wake up slowly, animals suddenly stir when they're disturbed. They'll lift their head in that way, in that immediate attention. And so somehow this dog for me is the beautiful narrative contrast to the sleep, and our sense of coming upon him is accentuated by that. The story, of course, is about Venus falling in love, and the question is the degree to which this sculpture makes you fall in love, and whether that recliningness is part of the love.
I think the dog's nose represents quite a sort of phallic intrusion in the otherwise completely passive creature. Again, I think the twisted body, you know, the knees coming towards us and the flattening of the chest. I think recumbent figures, the amount of space they actually occupy in the block intrigues me. It's such a narrow space that gets you know, pulled and pushed in all these directions and burrowed into. I think this is where, for me, the light and dark of stone really comes into its own with these reclining figures. You know, the fact that the dark shadows go right in underneath the body. But again, to me, this is very much part of a kind of Christ-like iconography. I can imagine this almost like a figure on the cross if you put it upright. There's a strange sense that this is still relying on Christian iconography to inform it in some way. I don't know.
What about the erotic in that, though? I mean, because I think you're right. You think that Christ is a...
It is an erotic thing, isn't it? I mean, it's the exposure of flesh in that way, and flesh where you don't know whether it's alive or dead, is such an extraordinary phenomena, I think, to have as an icon. And I think this is the same. I mean, Adonis usually in this position is dead, isn't he?
Yes.
And so, but he's asleep, yeah. But
There are no wounds, but of course he's actually pointing. I've just realised as you're talking to his chest in the place where Christ's wounds might well be. I don't know how we're doing for time. I haven't got a watch on. Okay, perfect. Well, we might move through this one a little bit more speedily.
Quickly, yes,
This is a piece that was bought not so long ago, and which the Met, to a man and a woman, absolutely hated when we bought it. It was, I think they found this kind of sensibility sort of deeply creepy, and I mean it's showing, as you can see, a young martyred saint. Alexandre Falguière has taken this subject of Saint I can never remember how he was, Tarcisius, I suppose, and there he is in a kind of ecstasy. And it's funny to me that Saint Sebastian was greeted with enormous pleasure in a similar kind of mode. I mean, and I don't know whether that was to do with the period or to do with the fact that he isn't reclining, and this sort of crawling along the ground in a kind of something which is both martyrdom and ecstasy. Really, the curator had to fight, I think, to get this into the collection.
But it's almost pre-Raphaelite sentimentality, isn't it? This one, it's dragging something out, and I think that aspect of sculpture I actually love. I love that theatricality, because something that takes up our space and can actually perform, even though it's a completely static thing. I think it's remarkable, regardless of whether I like it or not. There's something where it's so staged what this is. I mean, it doesn't, the actual content of it doesn't convince me, but the need to really milk the moment is, I think, extraordinary, you know, and to actually...
so do you like the phoniness of it?
Yes,
almost?
I do, yes, like the room we've just... the French apartment room, you know, sort of...
The kind of sort of strange double thing of utter conviction and total phoniness going on at the same time.
The labour, again, to actually make that, to manufacture that and produce that, to hold that in your head over all those weeks of carving that I think is extraordinary. I think it's like two things in complete opposition. The moment of the gesture of appealing and the upturned head, which looks almost like a pop singer, you know, in some way.
And you look down on him. Does that make a difference to the way?
A huge difference, I think, in the sense that we're looking, you know, the emotional behaviour, our emotional behaviour in relationship to objects and things, whether you're standing looking down or looking at or looking up, I think has a huge influence.